There's something most people never notice about silence. It terrifies them. Watch someone sit alone without their phone. Watch their hands twitch. Watch them reach for anything to fill the space. But here's what's strange. Some people can sit in that emptiness without breaking. Not because they're calm, not because they're enlightened, because they've found something there, something invisible, something that changes how they experience being human. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let me tell you something strange about happiness. The West builds systems. We optimize mornings. We download apps that gamify meditation. We read books about discipline by planners with time-blocking templates. Wake at 5 a.m. because someone said that's what successful people do. We're constructing scaffolding on the outside, hoping it'll hold us together. But here's what we miss. Japanese culture doesn't build scaffolding. It builds foundation. Not external systems you maintain, internal architecture you become. These aren't habits in the way we understand them. They're not routines you add to your life. They're psychological frameworks that change your relationship with being human, with pain, with time, with the space between who you are and who you thought you should be. Watch a Japanese elder sit in silence for an hour. No phone, no book, no visible discomfort. Now watch a Westerner try the same thing. 30 seconds, maybe a minute, then the twitch, the reach for the pocket, the sudden urgent need to check something, anything. It's not discipline that creates that difference, it's architecture. Because one person learned to fill the void with noise, with productivity, with constant doing. The other learned to sit inside the void and find it wasn't empty at all. One changed their behavior, the other changed their reality. And that's the difference we're talking about here. Not better morning routines, not optimized habits, but a complete restructuring of how you hold your own existence. But here's what they don't tell you about these practices. They're not about becoming better, they're about becoming whole. Picture a bowl. Not perfect, broken. Most cultures would throw it away. Japan fills the cracks with gold. Not to hide the damage, to honor it, because the bowl isn't less valuable after breaking, it's more. The fractures become the most beautiful part. The gold seams trace the history of what happened. And suddenly, the imperfection is what makes it irreplaceable. This is kintsugi, and it's not about pottery, it's about what breaking does to you, and what you do with what breaking leaves behind. Here's what most people miss about trauma. They think healing means going back to who you were before, returning to the unbroken version. But that's not healing, that's denial. Because post-traumatic growth isn't recovery, it's transformation. Watch two people who've been through something hard. One carries it hidden, locked tight, smiling through the weight, present but not really there. They've suppressed the damage, buried it deep, convinced themselves that not talking about it means it doesn't exist. The other carries it differently, openly. Not broadcasting it, but not hiding it either. The cracks are visible, and somehow they're lighter, more present, more real. That's integration versus suppression. When you hide damage, your nervous system stays on guard. The body keeps the score, holding the memory in your tissues, your breath, your posture. You become fragile in trying to appear unbroken. But when you give your body permission to tell the story, when you trace those cracks with gold instead of concealing them, something shifts. The nervous system exhales, the armor comes down. You don't become unbroken, you become anti-fragile. And that's just the surface, because there's a practice that asks an even harder question. What are you actually living for? Here's the paradox. The people who live longest aren't the ones who rest the most. In Okinawa, where people regularly live past 100, almost everyone can tell you their ikigai, their reason for waking up. Not their job, not their obligations, the thing that makes them want to see another sunrise. And researchers found something striking. People with ikigai live 7 years longer than those without it. But here's what's deeper than the statistics. Meaninglessness is violent. Not loud, not sudden, quiet, a slow erosion. You wake up and there's no reason to get out of bed except that you're supposed to. You go through the motions, do what's expected, check the boxes, and somewhere deep in your cells, something starts shutting down. Because your body ages differently when there's nothing pulling you forward. Scientists have measured this. When people lack purpose, their telomeres, the protective caps on DNA that determine how fast you age, they shorten faster. The body starts closing up shop, not because it's sick, because it's not needed. And here's what most people miss about Ikigai. It's not find your passion. That's too simple. Ikigai sits at the intersection of four things: what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what sustains you financially. When something touches all four, that's where meaning lives. But most people drift. They do what they're supposed to do, climb ladders they never chose, fill their days with obligation, and wonder why they're exhausted. Not because the work is hard, because it's empty. Obligation depletes, meaning energizes. Same hours, completely different weight. But even meaning isn't enough, because there's something we've lost in the West that Japan never gave up. There's a word in Japanese that has no English translation, and that tells you everything. Ma, ai. It means the space between things, the pause between notes, the silence between words, the negative space that holds everything together. And we've lost it completely. Watch how we move through the world now. Every moment filled. Podcast in the ears during the commute, Netflix while eating, scrolling while waiting, music while working. We've waged war on silence, on emptiness, on the space between. Not because silence is uncomfortable, because we're terrified of what rises when there's nothing to drown it out. Here's what that constant noise does to you. Your brain needs white space, not as a break, as processing time. The default mode network, the part of your brain that integrates experience, makes meaning, processes trauma, it only activates in silence, when there's nothing coming in. Which means when you fill every gap with stimulation, you're not just distracting yourself, you're preventing your mind from doing the work that makes you whole. Think about it. You finish a hard conversation and immediately reach for your phone. You wake up and check messages before your eyes adjust. You can't sit in a waiting room without scrolling. You've trained yourself to treat silence like a void that needs filling. But silence isn't empty, it's active. It's where meaning gets made. Try this. Sit for 5 minutes with nothing. No phone, no music, no task. Just sit. Watch what happens. The discomfort, the restlessness, the sudden urgent need to check something, do something, be productive. And beneath that, if you stay long enough, the anxiety, the feelings you've been outrunning. That anxiety isn't the problem, it's the signal. It's what you've been avoiding every time you reached for distraction. And when you finally create space to feel it, something shifts. And when you create that space, something unexpected happens. You start seeing your own imperfection differently. Consider this. The pursuit of perfection is making you sick. Not metaphorically, physically. The constant measuring against impossible standards creates a low-grade stress response that never turns off. Your body holding tension it can't release because you're never quite enough. This is wabi-sabi, saji, the acceptance of imperfection, impermanence, incompleteness. And it's not resignation, it's clear sight. Because here's what we've done in the West. We've built a culture around flawlessness, airbrushed skin, curated feeds, perfect bodies, spotless homes, lives that look complete from the outside. And we're drowning in inadequacy, trying to match images that aren't even real. You're not broken. The standard is. Nothing is perfect. Nothing lasts. Nothing is ever finished. Not you, not anyone. And Wabi Sabi says, that's not the problem. That's the point. A wrinkle isn't a failure. It's a map of every smile, every worry, every year you survived. A scar on your hand isn't damage. It's proof you built something, touched something, lived. That crack in your favorite mug isn't a flaw. It's history. When you see imperfection as the natural state of being alive, something lifts. You stop performing, stop comparing, stop fixing parts of yourself that were never broken. You stop carrying the weight of needing to be more. Not because you've given up, but because you've finally seen clearly. The beauty was always in the cracks, in the weathering, in the fact that you're here, imperfect and alive. But there's something even more beautiful than accepting imperfection. It's what happens when you truly see it. Have you ever felt a specific kind of sadness watching cherry blossoms fall? Not grief, not loss, something softer. A quiet ache in the chest that feels almost like gratitude. That's mono no aware. Mono no aware. The awareness of impermanence. the gentle sadness of things passing. And here's what makes it different from depression. Depression turns inward, it closes you off, makes the world heavy and distant. But Mono no Aware opens you outward. It makes everything sharper, more vivid, more present. Because when you truly acknowledge that nothing lasts, not this moment, not this conversation, not this life, everything becomes more precious. Think about it. When you know the cherry blossoms will fall, you actually see them. You stop, you look, you feel the weight of their beauty because you know it's temporary. But in the West, we fight impermanence. We take photos to freeze moments, record videos to preserve memories, hold on tighter, trying to make things last. And in that grasping, we miss what's actually here. Japanese culture does the opposite. It lets go. Not because it doesn't care, but because letting go creates gratitude without effort. You don't need to try to appreciate something when you know you'll lose it. The impermanence does that for you. The paradox is this: when you accept that this moment will end, you're finally present for it. And that awareness, that gentle sadness, it changes how you approach change itself. Here's what most people miss about change. They think it happens in explosions, New Year's resolutions, complete overhauls, burning the old life down and building something different from the ashes. But that's not transformation, that's shock, and your nervous system fights shock. Kaizen says the opposite, Gaisan. Continuous improvement, not dramatic, not visible, 1% better every day. Do the math. 1% better daily compounds to 37 times better in a year. But you won't see it happening, that's the point, because massive changes trigger resistance. Your brain registers the threat and activates every defense. Willpower battles biology, and biology always wins. But tiny changes slip through. One push-up, one page, one moment of sitting with discomfort instead of reaching for your phone. So small they don't register as change. So small your defenses stay down. And then one day you look back and you're not who you were. Not because you became someone new, because you became more yourself. Layer by layer, quietly, without announcement. This isn't self-improvement, it's self-evolution. The invisible accumulation of moments where you chose differently, where you didn't hide the crack, where you sat in the silence, where you let the moment pass instead of grasping it. And all of this, the gold in your cracks, the space between, the gentle sadness, it builds something. So here's the truth about transformation. It's not a list. It's not 8 steps you check off. These aren't life hacks. They're life. You don't need all of them. Pick one. Let it teach you. Maybe you start by honoring your cracks instead of hiding them. Maybe you create space for silence. Maybe you notice impermanence and let it make things precious instead of painful. The Japanese don't chase transformation, they allow it. Because remember what we started with, that invisible architecture? It's not genetics, it's not luck. It's a different relationship with being human, with breaking, with emptiness, with the fact that nothing lasts and nothing's perfect, and that's not the tragedy, that's the truth. Transformation is quieter than you think. It doesn't announce itself, it doesn't post updates, it just compounds, 1% at a time, one moment of awareness at a time, until you look back and realize you're carrying yourself differently. The weight shifted, not because you became stronger, because you stopped pretending the cracks weren't there. You don't become someone new, you just become more real. And maybe that's the point.